UCF's Taylor Hendricks is set to be his school's first lottery pick. This is Floor and Ceiling, let's break him down. The 19-year-old freshman had a breakout year with the UCF Knights, entering the season as a top 50 player in the class, and now he goes into the last weeks of June as a lottery pick, largely because of his three-point shooting and shot blocking. Let's start on the offensive end, with Hendricks stretching the floor. The 6'9" forward showed himself to be a highly capable floor spacer during his only season in college. At UCF, a little more than 40% of Hendricks' total shots came from beyond the three-point line. Hendricks made 49% of his threes, taking slightly under 5 a night. Both his volume and efficiency were high. Every player is going to have adjustments to make as he enters the NBA, but I think there is reason to believe that Hendricks will get even better looks once he's in the league. UCF ran a very equitable offense, so it's not like Taylor was pounding the air out of the ball. Despite that, he was still the guy that opposing teams needed to stop and converge on. In the NBA, that should not be the case, at least immediately. Hendricks will be entering a situation with less attention on him, and ideally easier opportunities and setups to keep cashing in on his threes. Most of the time, Hendricks played as a stretch big at UCF. Sometimes he was the only big on the floor. But I think with his skill set and size at over 6'9" in shoes, he should be able to play 3 through 5 down the line on offense. Hendricks can play off a guard, a wing, or a big. Maybe his game isn't that versatile like we'll get into, but I think his scalability is very valuable. From 3 in particular, Hendricks is great at gathering and organizing himself into his shot quickly. He squares his shoulders to the basket very well, and he has nice footwork that allows him to hop into his shot on balance. Defenders also find it tough to contest him because of his height. Definitely Hendricks can be used spotting up in the corner, but I expect him to be used in more pick and pop type situations in the NBA very soon. Ball screens are a staple of every offense, and Hendricks can play out of them as a shooter. The UCF forward also has more enticing and expansive self-creation flashes. At this point, Hendricks mostly operates out of catch and shoots, but it's not difficult to imagine him inflicting some damage out of 1 or 2 dribbles. Or, since Hendricks has real gravity as a shooter, maybe even no dribbles. I found this clip very interesting. Hendricks typically is used as the screener, but here he's the one who gets the pick out of the high horns, and it ends in the pull-up too. From this same game, Hendricks gets a face-up, and it's the same result with a very translatable process. The same applies with how Hendricks gets to this shot here, with how he fakes the dribble handoff and then rises into the baseline pull-up. With Hendricks' size and shooting, there's a lot of upside to be tapped into here. Maybe more timely than those flashes though is what Hendricks has already displayed attacking closeouts. This is more imperative to his immediate NBA role of course, but it's also tied to his long-term floor and ceiling. Hendricks is valuable as a spot-up shooter, but he cannot only be that. His process isn't always seamless right now, in fact it can be clunky, but I think he's big and skilled enough to already cause some problems here. Down the line, you're hoping that he builds on this. Hendricks is not a passer at all yet, more on this later, but at the very least he's shown some ability as a quick decision maker, even if it is very irregular. The Florida native can pitch in away from the ball as well. This is one of the best things about Hendricks. He's an efficient scorer, but he does so while not having the ball in his hands all that much. UCF shared the rock a lot, so Hendricks' usage rate is lower than other lottery picks. He's a willing cutter, particularly in and around the dunker spot, and a solid athlete. The more eye-catching things come from the perimeter, but Hendricks is also able to catch and finish on the inside. The same applies for above the rim. Being able to do the simple things is also important. When it comes to his finishing, Hendricks is somewhat of a mixed bag, especially in the half court. His numbers are decent. He had 36 dunks, for example, which is tied directly to his athleticism and his offensive rebounding. This is also a very strong point for the UCF forward. Maybe Hendricks' 7 rebounds per game don't exactly stand out, but he got nearly 2.5 boards on the offensive glass, and all of his advanced numbers look very good in this area. Hendricks is an above-average vertical athlete who understands how to time himself and leverage his size. This season, he finished with 31 putbacks, and overall, more than 1/3 of his total shots came at the basket. That's good volume, and Hendricks converted on 65% of his looks at the rim. That's not bad, but it is improvable for a 6'9"-ish guy playing as a big. Still, I like the flashes here though, and Hendricks has shown that he can do more than just catch and finish. From time to time, he's able to put the ball on the floor some. If he's working on the inside, Hendricks likes to spin, primarily to get back to his right hook shot. We've seen Hendricks go to this multiple times this season. It shows off his touch and high release point, but it also shines a light on some of his improvement points. The biggest one, really, is that almost everything is right-handed with Hendricks. Even when he's on the left side of the floor, the UCF forward is gonna want to turn back right at some point. That makes him predictable to an extent, and this will be amplified in the pros. Then, Hendricks also has limitations with his strength and his handle. They're both related and come into play in similar ways. Right now, Taylor is not at all a crafty ball handler. He lacks pace, reactivity, and even tightness. It can work because he's 6'9", but there are improvements to be made. Then, he's also not strong, so his handle already lacks creativity, but then Hendricks also doesn't have the strength or burst to get to his spots. There's just no way for him to consistently offset that first improvement point. If defenses make Hendricks sustain his handle for some time, or even make him play through contact or in traffic, he is going to struggle. Hendricks only made about 45% of his layups and non-dunks, so that will also have to improve. In general, Hendricks' self-creation still leaves much to be desired. Those flashes that we saw earlier are strictly flashes. Whenever Hendricks has to manufacture his own shot off the bounce, he has a tough time. The UCF forward is stiff with his handle, and he doesn't create separation off the dribble. This extends to the three-point line, where Hendricks is better off getting spoon-fed easier looks. Still, I very broadly believe in his shot. Even the looks that he misses are generally good ones, and I don't worry too much about the process. Early on in his career, his floor is pretty safe as a big floor spacer that can shoot from 3 and affect the rim a lot. Hendricks is a projectable, efficient finisher there, even if improvements have to take place. And then, this will be more of a multi-year process, but I expect Hendricks' shooting off the dribble to eventually improve. A big part of that, like I just said, is going to be developing his frame, which still needs more muscle, as well as his handle. But if none of this happens, the question mark then is how many different ways can you use Hendricks? I at least think that he will be reliable as a spot-up shooter, and in everything else, Hendricks has somewhat of a base. You're not developing him from scratch. But I'm not sure that the same can be said for him as a facilitator. Other than rebounding, Hendricks doesn't create for others. He had a 1-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio, and even the better passes that he made were very basic. At the college level, plenty of growth already had to take place in terms of facilitating for Hendricks. For instance, you want him to be secure and accurate on these dribble handoffs. Many forwards are asked to execute these in the NBA, so these cannot be turnovers. At this juncture, I'm just not seeing Hendricks make many high-level reads, and he's unsure of how to leverage the attention that he creates for himself to generate for others. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that I think a lot of the time, Hendricks is going to be a play finisher rather than a play creator. On defense, we have to start with Taylor Hendricks' rim protection. The UCF forward is among the best in this area in his draft class with his tracking ability, verticality, and use of both hands. Hendricks averaged almost 2 blocks per game, and he had 59 rejections in 34 games as a freshman. He's a fearsome rim protector who profiles really well in this regard. If we combine Hendricks' two-way athleticism at the basket and shooting from deep, we end up with similarities to Keegan Murray or even Mikal Bridges. Those are two big wings with 3-point shooting and defensive upside who contributed to their teams pretty immediately after getting drafted. I'm not saying Hendricks plays like them, but his statistical profile is comparable. The biggest improvement that he has to make maybe around the basket is his placement. Hendricks might get pulled away from the rim or just stand a little too far away to really make a difference. However, all of that is easily improvable. At this point, I think Hendricks is at his best when he's in the paint or close to the basket. This includes post-ups. Even though Hendricks does need to get stronger on offense, I actually think that this is less of a problem down the other end. Taylor's handle and finishing relies on burst, but I don't think he needs that as much here because of his timeliness and also his toughness. The UCF forward can stay strong for a few bumps down low, even against bigger opponents in the post. Hendricks is sturdy, and he'll either get the stop himself or hold on long enough for somebody else to come in and help, such as here against Jarris Walker. In space, I'm less sure about Hendricks. Sometimes he does okay. I think Taylor can keep up with bigger wings or forwards, for example. He moves around the floor well, and he's pretty mobile, positionally speaking. We've even seen greater glimpses of this at times, for example, when he faced Houston. Hendricks was comfortable switching out on the perimeter and making himself an issue. We see this versus Marcus Sasser here. The UCF forward was making multiple efforts, getting down in a stance, and most of all, using his length to get blocks or alter shots. However, we've also seen the other side of the coin. At least at this point, I really feel like Hendricks is more of a positional defender. That doesn't mean you have to keep him parked at the basket. For me, he's at his best there, but the UCF man is able to move on the perimeter to contain wings and forwards. Yet, I haven't seen him consistently hold up against smalls in the same way. Guards are not afraid to take Hendricks on, and I'm also curious to see how he'll fare in the pick and roll. Hendricks has been inconsistent here, but there are flashes of him defending at the level and then using his rim protection and length as a means to recover. Taylor Hendricks has the means to be the next, 3-and-D big in the NBA. A 6'9" guy who's able to space the floor reliably, but who's also a very capable shot blocker. I will want to see more from Hendricks in the pick and roll, but overall, I am very impressed by his verticality at the rim. I think that the next key for him will be just to develop any type of self-creation at all. He's inconsistent finishing at the rim. He needs to work on his left hand, and not just that, but I really think that unlocking his jumper out of 1 or 2 dribbles would give him an entirely different dimension. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a comment, and if you enjoy the channel, if you want to watch more content like this, make sure to subscribe. Take care, and I'll catch you guys next time.